Hello, professionals. My name is Rico Aladdin, and I'm the founder of Professional Lunch. Today, we have Trent Lee on Professional Lunch for a conversation about leadership and growth for aspiring young professionals. So we are so happy that to have you here, Trent. Please tell the Professional Lunch audience a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself.
Or a lot about yourself.
A lot about myself. Of course, my name is Trent Lee. I am a longtime Fargo business owner, 20-year corporate executive. So a little bit about me. Grew up in Bellevue, Nebraska, a little suburb of Omaha, and went to work coming out of school. Grew up working out on the family farm out in central Nebraska. So I was the oldest grandson of the oldest daughter, and so that makes you the hired hand. And so I spent most of my summers working out on the family farm, and kind of impacted my life from work hard and ethic and doing all those things, and then thought I wanted to be a ag banker and a business banker. And so that's what I did when I went to school. I was a finance and management grad at the University of Nebraska in Kearney in central Nebraska, kind of out by our farm. And in that process, like I said, I wanted to be a banker. I kind of had that squared away. And while I was in school, I worked for a small community bank in Omaha for about 3 years. And significant for me because I was able to watch this 40-year strong small community bank with 2 locations. We're going to be here for another 40 years. Saw an acquisition take place. So this family-owned bank sold to Norwest Bank, who at that time, I think they were the 7th or 8th largest bank in the country. And today, Norwest Bank is Wells Fargo. I think most people are familiar with those. So I watched this acquisition over a 3-year period of time that I was working at the bank take place. In year 1, it was a family bank, and the junior loan officer had been there for 12 years. And so to get promoted or get a job at that bank, somebody had to die or retire, unfortunately. So I knew that wasn't going to be a long-term home. It was a training opportunity for me. I was trying to understand the banking industry, how business worked, how do you interact with people and professionals. And then the second year, I saw this acquisition begin to take place where our accounting department in the bank was going to go away because we already had that service someplace else within Norwest. And then loan officers became business bankers or retail bankers or customer service, all these different things. So a lot of change, a lot of difficulty going from this family-owned bank to this big corporate thing. And then year 3, kind of all those things had shaken out, and impactful for me because my business career is heavily rooted in mergers and acquisitions. So I was always the kind of the post-acquisition guy, or I was the one that after we had maybe opened a new facility in my corporate career, I was the one that would go in and the first one on the ground to help bring culture back into the organization or we had acquired somebody and maybe that transition didn't go very well, or maybe it went great and we were trying to expand into a new market. And so watching this acquisition play out, I didn't realize it until after I left my corporate position that my whole career was post-acquisition work. So after we had acquired a company and all those changes, good or bad, that come after that, those were the things that I got exposed to corporately. And so I was going to go work for a bank, and somewhere along the way, I started kind of poking around in some other businesses, and I fell in love with this company called Ferguson Enterprises. At the time, they were the largest plumbing, piping, HVAC distributor in the country. And I think at that time, this was quite a while ago, but we had just hit 1 billion in sales.
Wow.
Big company. We're by far number 1. Today, that same company is, I think, 30 billion. And so fortunately, I had the opportunity to spend almost 20 years career there, and went to work, and I was in their management and sales training program. They kind of run you through all the departments. You learn everything about that goes on in selling toilets and pipe and furnaces and boilers and all that crazy valves that go into power plants and that kind of stuff. and absolutely fell in love. They were a very unique company and still are, very forward thinking, not your traditional, in air quotes, plumbing distributor company that I'm going to say old school and things like that. Just very progressive, would look to our peers, not in the industry, but other best-in-class businesses to evolve. So again, my career there, as I worked my way through, again, I kind of got moved around, and I was the one that would volunteer for the really hard, kind of icky jobs that a lot of people would run away from because they weren't always the sexiest things in the world, and could potentially be career limiting in some places, but didn't intimidate. I liked the hard work, the hard, challenging stuff, and then kind of got moved all over the place, and ultimately ended up being, I spent about half my time in management levels or sales related, and then the second half of my career there was a group or a division president, general manager. And so kind of P&L, profit and loss responsibilities for those facilities. And that's how we ended up here in Fargo. And then the last couple of years I was at Ferguson, I was part of the mergers and acquisitions team. So I was kind of the mergers side of that, where after we had acquired a company, I was the one that would go in and work with that former business owner that we would typically have stay on as that divisional president. So I was tasked with helping ensure that acquisition or that integration went well. So I was coach, confidant, advisor, navigator of all things corporate, all those different things. And then in that process, didn't realize it, but I was being a business coach. And at that time, that wasn't really a term, but really what I was doing. And then I was approached by a company called Vistage, who is one of the world's leading CEO peer advisory businesses, or membership based. But how do you put together groups of business owners into peer groups? So if you could imagine 10 or 15 business owners, CEOs, chief decision makers in their businesses, all from non-competing industries that come together once a month, talk about their business challenges, opportunities, issues they're having, business and personal, because all those things kind of blend together. But it being a confidential place, a safe place, an area where owners can go and just they can let down and work through those challenges that you have when you're sitting in that top spot. You say it's lonely at the top. It is horribly lonely at the top. Because where do you go where you can get advice that isn't driven by an agenda, isn't driven by somebody trying to sell you something, or trying to manipulate you one way, or trying to get your money, or something like that. So a place where other business owners that are dealing with the exact same thing that we all deal with as a business owner can get advice, and everybody's there to be helpful and to get help without any strings tied, so we don't solicit from each other. So no one's there to network or market or try and sell you something. We're there just to be helpful. So I was approached by Vistage about starting our first peer groups in the Red River Valley here about 11, 12 years ago, and fell in love with the concept. And I was like, wow, I'm like, is this a real job? I'm like, this is awesome. So it's my own coaching consulting practice. Vistage gives me a lot of the back end support and the structure and some marketing tools and whatnot. But that's how my practice started here, like I said, 10, 12 years ago. And it's kind of grown since there. I got more into strategic planning, helping businesses or business owners put operating systems in place. So not IT operating system, but an operating system on like, how do we run our business? How do we goal set? How do we do our strategic planning? How do we what is our talent optimization plan? Like, how do we align our business strategy with our talent strategy, and what does that look like? So all those different things, helping owners do that. I'm a certified exit planner, so I help businesses get their business ready for when they're going to transition it, whether they sell it out externally, outward, that maybe they sell it to their internal employees, leadership team, employee purchase, or if they're going to transition the business even to adult children in the business. Don't care. I'm not a broker, so I don't sell the business. I just help them get the business ready. So how do we make sure that the value of the business doesn't go backwards when we do that transaction? and spent a lot of time there. And then again, all things around workforce transformation, human capital. How do we make work a better place? And we do that through a whole number of tools, but self-awareness, better communication. How do we retain and motivate our employees better based on who they are, not what we're trying to force somebody to be. So all that stuff, put all that stuff together. That's kind of my background, what I do, and how I got to where I am today.
Wonderful. I have probably 100 follow-up questions. But I have to leave the door open for another show, because I got a feeling that you have so much to give, you have so much to share with young professionals, which is why I have this platform, is to talk to people like you who can help others who are starting out, find some tips and tricks that you can share with them so that they can launch their own careers. And so based on what you share with me today, I really don't know where to start with the follow-up questions, because there are so many. But when you were starting out, what inspired you to pursue a career in business?
Great question. So let me think here. I had my first newspaper out when I was 10 years old, I think. I was delivering the Bellevue Leader and the Sarpy County Sun. This was back in the day. Like I said, I was probably, maybe I was 7 or 8 years old when I think about that. But really, that was kind of my first business.
Okay.
And then I was the guy that had 6 lawns that I would mow for the little old ladies across the street and down the street, and I'd the one dragging my lawnmower up and down the street. And then I picked up my second newspaper route with the Omaha World Herald, so I had 2 newspaper routes, shoveling snow and doing odd jobs, working on the farm, all those different things. And at some point you you get excited about kind of the work you do, and then you get a little bit of money coming in, and you kind of start seeing this thing come together. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a principal, and my mom was high school accounting teacher, college accounting teacher, and so got a lot of impact from her, a lot of lessons learned on, okay, now that you've got this little newspaper business, and this was back in the day where you had to go around and collect the money.
Yeah.
Not like today where there's automatic payment, it just happens. Like you had to go out and kind of sell your newspaper. And so the whole idea of bad debt, uncollectible funds, because you'd go and knock on the door and collecting, and people would never show up, or, oh yeah, my wife has a checkbook, can you come back next week? And stiffing the little 10-year-old kid with the newspaper. But you start picking up some lessons where, I joke that it's a sales thing, but there's a delivery component. I would get complaints, official complaints, if the newspaper wasn't delivered on time, or if it was wet, or if it wasn't whatever, fill in the blank, didn't show up, or maybe I missed the delivery, and then people don't collect the money, and you start building that at a young age, or at least I did. And then it is a business, and you start getting excited about that. And as I was going through college, I was deeply driven by my time working on the farm. And I was somewhere between, again, I want to be an ag maker, or I want to be an agricultural engineer. And I say this tongue in cheek, the whole engineer thing is a lot of work. So I was like, it'd be a whole lot easier being in business, and I think I could be successful in both. So, but really, that's kind of how it started. Is those little entrepreneurial things, and then I knew I wanted to do something ultimately kind of wrapped around ag, and then just as that started to evolve, and in school I was like Mr. Campus Involvement. I was involved in a ton of different groups, and always enjoyed being out talking with people, and networking. That wasn't like the term at the time. It was just out talking with people, making friends, influencing people. But that's kind of how it started. And then again, to find a world where you start putting those things together, that's
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yes. So you mentioned you have an education in finance, right? So how did your education in finance and management shape your early career? Because one thing we want to see, we are seeing now, is a lot of times it does, we meet students who are about to graduate with a degree, whatever the degree might be, and sometimes not only they do not know what they're gonna do with that major, but they have no idea how to use that major to give themselves some leverage. So how did your education in finance and management shape your early career?
Yeah, so when I started, I thought I wanted to do accounting, accounting and management. And I was accounting and finance and management. At the end of the day, I don't want to say I really ever, like, air quotes, changed my major. I just kind of added stuff.
Okay.
So I didn't get like too committed and have to back up and then like, oh, I get all this stuff done. I actually graduated in 3.5 years. I had a double, took full loads, worked during the summer, took classes during the summer. I was kind of on a mission. But for me, I'm really I'm going to say more of a management type personality than I am a finance type personality. When I was going into finance, it was, I used it, my saying on finance is understanding of money. Like, how does money work in business? That was my concept. So what can I learn from that standpoint? I wasn't looking to go be an investment person or a financial advisor or trade stocks or anything. I do all those things, but that wasn't my motive there. It was like, the finance was, how do we better understand, be better equipped to be a great executive? That's what I wanted to do. And in that, as a kind of a follow-up on your question, the degree isn't the path to everything going on. It's like, what did you do in the process of getting it? Unfortunately, I think we've had this period of time where the assumption was, well, if I have a degree, that's what I need to get, success or whatever that might be. That's kind of the end all be all answer, and it's not. Yeah. It's what do you learn along the way? I look at the degree, whatever it is, as kind of the end goal, but it's not the key to the kingdom. It's like, what are all those experiences that you picked up along the way in trying to accomplish that? I'm fortunate enough to be an advisor for one of the fraternities, the new Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity at North Dakota State University, which is really exciting about that. But one of the things I shared with that group on one of their inaugural meetings was that experience, that thing you put on the resume, I did this, or I was in charge of this group, or I was an officer in this organization, that isn't the end all. And I find so often with the candidates that I'm interviewing or have interviewed, or the folks that I'm working with my clients on helping them figure out how do I get the best candidate hired, so many of those candidates, those applicants, are graduates that are out looking for jobs. They lose track of, it's not what the organization's on my resume. It's what did I do? What did I learn? What did I expose to? How did that experience help me? And how can I translate that into, here's the experience that's made me who I am today, and here's how I can bring that to my new organization. And so for me, from a finance standpoint, it wasn't having the finance degree. It was like, what can I learn along the way? And the groups that I was involved with Student Senate, and I was in several marching bands. I was college Republicans and some leadership groups and a whole myriad of things. And it was like, what can I learn in those settings that I can use to make me a better person, to bring me around where I can be a better executive, a better employee for the team I'm working for. So it's not about the management or the finance. It's like, what are all those things I learned along the way? And then how do you for newer folks coming into the workforce, how do you take all those things you learned and put them in a way that you can articulate that of how you can help the new business you're going into?
Wonderful, man. You put that so well that I almost asked you to repeat it, but I didn't want to break your train of thoughts there because this is this is what's this is so important what you just said. Take what is it that you can learn from that degree that you are, getting, and use it to get to where you want to go. And I think that is so true, man. I tell you, this is why we have professional lunch. We have it because we want to hear from people who have been in business for 30 years or so. And those are things that what you are sharing with us right now. It's not thing we're gonna learn at the school.
Yep.
It's something that you find out. You start out like, oh, there are some classes I really didn't need to take them, or there are some classes that I could have paid a little more attention to it because now, look at me now, where I am now, I could use that to get myself further. And so that's, this is really, really cool. And so on follow up on that, what was the most, significant challenges that you faced in your early roles, and how did you overcome them?
Wow, most significant people is always it's like it's always about people and coworkers. And, starting any new venture, there's a learning curve.
Yeah.
Right. You're kind of uncomfortable. It's around change management. You're like, oh, this is all different. I got to learn a new computer system, or I got to learn whatever this new process is that that started a new job. And there's all these things I got to do. There's that piece, but it's like, how do you interact and lead within a team when your title isn't boss? Right?
Wow.
Something like that. And that's one that I always like to say there's position power, and then there's people power.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a lot of our younger executives get focused on the position power thing, where, well, I can't do that, or I can't make that change, or I can't get this person to do something because I'm not the manager or the supervisor or the boss. And this concept of having to be, or have a title, or where I've got to be somebody's boss to be able to lead or manage them. Just the contrary. There's this other side of the coin called people power,
mm-hmm.
where how do, and this is where I'm going to say more leadership comes organically. The people power thing is, how do we lead in teams of people without being designated the head of the team? How do we use our influence? How do we use our communication skills? Those are the things that are always the hardest, because you've got to exert yourself, and you got to convince other people that you have great leadership, that you have good ideas, that you can communicate well, that you can you have a vision, you can communicate that vision, and you can paint this picture of where we could go, and get everybody who might have contrary ideas or decisions or things that they want to do, convincing them that this is the best way to do it. That was probably the hardest part. I think the thing that runs across, I see in all the organizations that I work with, and not only just younger executives, but all executives, where it's not always the title that makes people want to do things, but leaders want to follow great leaders, and not because their title, but because there's something about them inspires where they want to go. And whether that's a personal inspiration or a business or a vision of the company, but that's like the thing that just keeps popping up, and like that's the big piece.
Yeah. Is it influence? Is it communication? Is it clarification of the vision? No. What?
A lot of it is I don't want to say inspiration, but again, there's delusion is not having a plan and trying to get everybody to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be something that inspires people to lead, and regardless of the organization, some people just have it, whatever it is. There's just something about them that just, it's a charisma or an excitement, or there's just something that some people gravitate to. Sometimes that just comes natural.
Yeah.
Other people, it's in them, but sometimes you gotta kind of get to know them a little bit, or you gotta get them, talking about where they're going, get them excited. But until that comes out, it's like, what is that? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. What is it? It's a great question.
Yeah. So when I'm listening to you talking, one thing I realized that you over the years. Well, first, how long have you been in business whether for working for companies or in your own business in total?
Since I was 10. Does that count? 40 years.
There you go. So
I guess I spent, I'm going to say about 23 or 24 years, I'm going to say, in the corporate world.
Okay.
And then working for other people. And then I think I'm 11 or 12 years in my own company and my own practice. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but I also owned, we had a couple businesses that we owned privately here in town too. We had a convenience store, and we had a little coffee shop and a little pizza franchise and stuff like that too.
Okay.
But all those things together, I don't know, let's call it 3 decades.
Yeah, okay, all right, 3 decades business. And as you can imagine, and again, I always go back to this. When I'm talking to folks who are very successful, one thing I ask, what I'm trying to get is anything that can help young professionals. So what skills do you believe that are essential for young professionals starting a business now?
Communication. Period.
Okay.
Period.
Okay, well, this is my follow-up there. So what makes good communication? What is it about? I mean, you can summarize that, because communication is a very big term, but you can summarize that for us.
It is. Mm-hmm. The ability to interact with other people. And there's lots of ways to communicate, right? Mm-hmm. There's this verbal thing, there's nonverbal, which is really more than that. That's really more than anything. Mm-hmm. We've got these little $1,000 computers that we walk around in our pockets we call them cell phones or whatever. And we can text and email and group me and whatever app is your thing. But being able to communicate and not to not to belittle the technical side of the communication, because you have to be able to do that. And we've got some tools. AI kind of helps us do some, when we have that blank page and we're like, okay, what do I say here? There's some good prompts there. There's some tools that are coming, but being able to communicate with other associates, I'm going to say specifically verbally and non-verbally, being able to interact with somebody in person. We are human beings, and for some reason, being around other human beings, that's when we really thrive. Mm-hmm. And all these other communication methods are just tools. But being able to inspire people, be able to look in their eyes and understand and be able to convey a vision. Rico, have I showed you what vision looks like? Have I told you that story about the painting?
Yep.
So I'll just kind of recap. Vision is the ability to sell $1,000 oil painting over the phone. So when you think about that, $1,000 oil painting, it's a visual thing. It's something you would see to appreciate. You can't listen to an oil painting, right? But when you're on the phone trying to sell it, that's what you're audibly trying to sell something that somebody else can't physically see. And so, and that's the essence of vision, and being able to sell that. And whether it's like a business vision and some grandiose thing, or if it's just an idea or a concept, our ability to take that $1,000 oil painting that is clear in my head, and my vision of that oil painting is a 4 foot wide by 3 foot tall, really big, heavy canvas painting with this gold ornate wood trim around the outside. And then the picture, this is this beautiful North Dakota setting of this western North Dakota rolling hills, where it's just a big grass wheat field. You can tell it's toward the end of the summer, and the grass is kind of swaying a little bit, and the light breeze and full sun, blue sky, and out on the horizon there's this one lone huge oak tree that you can tell has been there for 150 years, full of leaves, and there's this little blue stream coming by. You can see it. So that's what vision is. If you think about that, everybody's got a picture in their head of what that is. Being able to communicate what that vision is for you, that idea, that theme, that whatever that thing is you're trying to get everybody inspired around, you've got to be able to do that. That's very difficult to do in a text message, like what I just said. But being able to inspire people to follow where you're trying to go, that communication piece is huge, and be able to physically interact with people. My wife's a 8th grade math teacher here in Fargo, and we work I love her. She is awesome. She's the one that made our kids, I'm going to say, pretty successful. One of those things is their ability to communicate. My youngest child, she is, when she was 10 years old, she could communicate with somebody that was in their 40s and have a regular conversation. Wow. And that skill right there, can you communicate with people outside of your peer group, outside of your age demographic? It's very easy for 16-year-olds to communicate with 16-year-olds, right? They kind of vibe that way. That's cool. But how many 14-year-olds can have a conversation with a 30-year-old and hang in there? That is just a glimpse of the example when I say communicate. How are you able to communicate across generational divides? There's this whole, the Gen Zs and the boomers, and there's like, oh, you're a boomer and you don't know what you're doing. And the boomers are like, you're a Gen Z or you're a millennial, you don't know what you're doing. That's probably the essence of success. I find those that can communicate, to summarize it up, those that can communicate across generations and inspire that vision or that idea, those are the ones that I find are the most successful.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Again, when I'm preparing for this interview, I did not anticipate how good it's getting right now. I really didn't. And it's like, you get to a point where, I've done this, for a while now. And there are interviews that you have, you really wonder, man, I wonder you should have had this like maybe 5 years ago, right? Talking about communication, the way you talk about it, it's really, it makes sense. It makes sense to me, it makes sense. I hope young professionals who are listening to this can understand the value in being able to communicate your vision to whoever that can, that holds the opportunity that you're looking for. And I think that's very, very, very important. Thank you for sharing the painting. I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm like, okay, now I have an idea of what you're talking about.
You ready to buy that $1,000 painting?
Yeah. So, as a young leader, so how can young leaders, cultivate the mindset required to, to have a business or to be able to communicate their vision? How can they do that? And because I go to school for communication, and sometimes I struggle to help people understand exactly what I want to do, because there is something in my head, and I'm always questioning whether or not I say what's in my head to the people who wants to know what I'm trying to say, right? So how can people cultivate that mindset required, for them to be able to do that? Is it listening? Is it reading? What is it that can make them do that?
Oh my gosh, there's like 100 answers to that.
Okay.
I'm not even sure where to
give me
start.
Give me the first 10.
Well, as you started to say that, my first thought is read.
Yeah.
Read. And here's the deal. I hate reading. I am a slow reader. My reading stamina is like lower than the basement, and but there's this like incredible tool on this little $1,000 computer thing that we carry around in our pocket. I use Audible.
Yeah.
And it is fabulous. And I've found a way to get my Audible up to 2.0. So I listen to it at 2 times speed. Slowly over a period of time, you kind of start ratcheting up. So you go through an incredible amount of information in a fairly short period of time. My goal is my goal this year is 45 books. And of those 45, I will generally like physically read 3 of those. All the rest of those are that I listen to, and I use the bookmark piece, and I'll go back and oftentimes we'll reread those. I'll take notes, pull those out. The idea that there's just a lot of concepts and ideas and thoughts that come from authors, thought leaders, and love what you do here, with the podcast, because it's just another tool. And there's a podcast very popular right now. There's a lot of stuff, similar type of thing. What ideas, what thought leadership come from other people. They don't have to be, people with, doesn't have to be Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or, Elon Musk or Jim Collins or anybody else. There's a lot of local thought leaders, and but getting out and being exposed to different ideas, that's the key. And I use reading as just one of those methods, podcast another method, but how do you expose yourself to other thoughts, other ideas? I think unfortunately, here maybe over the last, it seems like 5 or 6 years, there's this concept of like, I don't like what you're saying, so I'm just gonna block you. And we lose something there, and of course there's a lot of that goes on in politics today. Okay, whatever, but even from a business standpoint, there's just ideas that oftentimes we try and ignore, and I think we got to get that out of our head. We've got to be exposed to different ideas. There's lots of things that I listen to and expose myself to that, like, not a fan of that. I'm not going to do that myself. I don't know if I would incorporate that in any of my businesses, but boy, that helps me craft what it is I do believe. And so just being exposed to different ideas, not everything is like, well, I love that, I'm going to use it. Sometimes it's like, I don't know if I agree with that, and I don't know if I like that. But you got to understand both, because until you understand kind of the antithesis, to figure out what you like, sometimes it's easier to figure out like what I don't like, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the first things, just exposure to ideas, again, books or however you do that. What was the gist of your question again?
Communication, how do you define the mindset to find
get out in traffic.
Yeah.
That sounds funny, right? You're like, what? Wait, what are you talking about? We're playing Frogger or computer game or something? No, I use the term getting out in traffic. That is, get out from beneath your desk, get out from your little home office or whatever it is your deal. You got to get out. You got to interact with people.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself out there. And again, I use the term, you got to get out in traffic. Get out and network, and understand what does networking mean. It's not network. It's not net easy. It's net work. It's like you got to work to do it.
Yeah.
You don't just show up. It's got to be intentional.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of us, there's kind of sometimes maybe a negative connotation around networking. What does that mean? I go to this, I got to go to this big room with 100 people in it, and I'm walking around being slimy and passing out business cards and all that stuff. Like, no. Getting out in traffic and networking is about identifying opportunities to develop relationships.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Rico, how you and I connected, right? We've had many great conversations, really enjoyed all of them. But talking about different ideas and concepts and developing relationships where, there's people, our life is not one single event. It's a whole series of meeting people. It's what I am today. I get better every single day. That's my thing. Day by day, every single day, I get up, I get better and better and better. And even the difficulty that I have yesterday or the day before helps make me who I am today. So part of that is that networking piece. Are you getting out, developing relationships, and learning from other people? It's like, how do we learn? Unfortunately, I would say I spent probably the first half of my career, I don't want to say not a learner, because obviously learned a lot of different stuff, but I would say probably not intentional.
Yeah.
And definitely not intentional enough. Today, I'm very intentional. I'm always looking for opportunities that how do I learn and grow? And that's often what we look for in our Vistage peer groups of business owners. We're looking for folks that are lifelong learners, that are out there that want to grow personally, want to grow professionally, and getting out there and again exposing yourself to that network thing, getting exposed, because within those interactions, kind of back to the communication, the more we can do that, the more we can exchange ideas. There's things that I learn from people every single day, and I watch my kids do stuff, and I'm just kind of fascinated sometimes, where I sit back and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And how engaged are we in things going on, or we just let things kind of go on around us and we really don't pay attention? Taking the time to stop and really engage and be intentional on those things. Those are like really big meaty things. Get out there, get in traffic, work on the network side, and it's about developing relationships, and it's about providing value, maybe first. I have this, I'm going to paraphrase, but I ran across this quote in college at some point, and actually I know what it was. So at the University of West Kearney, I was involved with one of the student groups that we would bring speakers into campus. One of the speakers we brought in was Zig Ziglar, and Zig was a great thought leader back in the 90s, still around today, or his organization's still around. But he had a quote, and it so resonated with me, and it really was like that thing. We all run into something at some point in our life where you're like, wow, that's me. Yeah. Mine was help enough other people get what they want, you'll eventually get what you want. And that's a Zig quote. If you Google that, I think it's worded differently, I think officially, but when he was at University of West Kearney speaking there, and that's effectively the way he said it. Help enough other people get what they want, you will eventually get what you want. So kind of the karma thing, just be a good person. Yeah. Just be a good human being, and help and give, and it will come back to you tenfold. Yeah. And that's one of those things that I was exposed to. It's just resonated my entire life, but that's one of those things where going out and helping other people, that networking thing, find ways to be helpful for other people, it will come back around. So get out and network, be a better communicator, be in traffic, get out there and learn, add ideas to your head.
Wonderful. So before we go into advice for young professionals, there are two questions that I want to ask you about. It's about building success and also overcoming challenges. We kind of touched on that earlier. Can you share an example of a leadership decision that had a significant impact on your career trajectory?
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. Leadership decision. This was a hard one. We built our convenience store here in town, built it from the ground up. That time we thought we had an opportunity in the market. Most of the convenience stores, this was kind of the mid-2000s, they were tired, they were outdated, they're kind of dirty, that traditional C-store. We thought we could do better than that. Okay. And so we built this brand new convenience store, huge thing, kind of the best of the best. We were actually voted Fargo's favorite for several years, And coming out of the recession, 2008, 9, 10, 11, we had some shovel-ready jobs. We were able to close the interstate overpass on 45th Street. We were able to expand 45th Street to what it is today. It's 6 lanes, it's a great thoroughfare, but at the time, it destroyed our business. Not very convenient to be a convenience store where the road is closed. But in that, we had to make the really hard decision of, do we stick with this thing? Do we continue to pump money in this? Where we're looking for probably another year of construction, and we're just not going to get there. And unfortunately, we had to make the really hard decision to close the store and sell off the assets. And unfortunately, that impacted. We had about 20 or 24 employees that impacted. Obviously, our families, everything that we put into that. Very difficult decision. But that being said, between my corporate time and my own private business, our small business that my partner and I own together, learned a ton. And the challenges that come with dealing with the hard stuff is where the growth is. And so often I think we try and insulate ourselves from the pain, try and insulate ourselves from the hard conversations or the difficult things. They're not fun, right? No one wants to get up. Unfortunately, I mentioned at Ferguson, some of the branches I ran were underperforming facilities. Our group up here in North Dakota and northern Minnesota, we're rock stars all the time, and everybody here is awesome. All my employees were. But in some of the other locations I had, we had to make some really difficult decisions. Having to let a number of people go, or doing what's right for the best interest of all the other employees, because maybe the business has outgrown 1 or 2 employees, or maybe they're not a good culture fit, and really becoming toxic for the customers, becoming toxic for other employees. Very difficult, but that's where the growth comes, is in those, having to make those really gut-wrenching, hard decisions, those difficult conversations, and that's as a business owner, right? If you're not a business owner, it still applies. We have, if you're still a college student and we're working on that project together, and there's 5 of us working on something, and Rico, you ain't pulling your weight, brother. What's going on? Everybody else is working really hard. You ain't pulling your weight. How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
You got to have that heart-to-heart conversation. You do it in you have to be brave, courage. You have to do it in a we call it confrontational. We're gonna confront you. We're gonna do it in a caring way.
Yeah.
We can be professional about it, and but the growth for all of us comes in those difficult things. If everybody was perfect, what a horrible place that would be. I mean, imagine if I was perfect. My kids would look at me and be like, how do I even come close to that? Or other people I might work with. So fortunately, we are all flawed. And we have great opportunities to get better, and we make mistakes. But that's where the growth is living in that difficult area.
Yeah. Talking about mistake, that's led to my next question. So can you discuss, and you can use a different time. Can you discuss a time when a failure or maybe a mistake turned into a valuable learning experience?
Oh, so to that point, when we closed the convenience store, it was Vistage had approached me, and we were talking about this and that. And ironically, I think of my 20 years running branches for largest distribution company in the country and just all that stuff that goes with that, they cared more about the challenge I went through of having to close the store, having to close our business, which we, blood, sweat, and tears, and time and treasure and all that stuff into that. Ironically, if that would have been a huge success, and maybe there was like 10 other stores today, I don't know if I'd be doing what I'm doing today.
Hmm.
I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing today, because there's back to, the growth comes where all those difficult things are, and my coaching and consulting practice is better today, not because of all the great things that I've been able to succeed in, but in the challenges that I've been exposed to and how I've been able to work through those things. Success is not guaranteed. Success is not forever, and failure is not fatal.
Yeah.
And so often, we can look around and let's pick on Steve Jobs. So this guy that was one of the founders of Apple.
Yeah.
He was fired from his own company. Board of directors are like, you are a loser. We're going to fire you. Yes, we know you're an owner, but we're still going to fire you. And what did he do? He went away. He self-reflected. How do I get better? He went and created entered this animation industry, started this company called Pixar, and then ironically Apple comes back around, and I think they repurchased them or bought them, and then he ends up being the CEO again for Apple and takes it to the next level. Again, failures are not fatal, and if we're not putting ourselves out there, if we're not finding opportunities to fail and learn, that's where that adversity comes. You have enough grit to get punched solid right in the solar plexus and be able to get back up and be like, okay, that hurt. Not gonna do what I can do not to do that again. But can you grow from that? Can you learn from that? Can you get back up and keep going? Our business industry, unfortunately, I think it's sort of a disservice, and we don't talk enough as business leaders, not even business leaders, but just in business in general. I don't think we talk enough about the failures and the hardships and the challenges that we've had. All we see is, the success. All we see is that business owner that sold took their little small business and blew it up and sold it for, 10 times multiple and $100 million, and look at all the money they have now and all this stuff. Is like, but we don't see all the times when they had to go and beg to their banker and literally mortgage their house and transfer credit card debt from one credit card to another credit card to another credit card, just to have enough cash flow to stay one more week in business to pay my employees. That way we can continue to build whatever it is widget that you're doing or whatever. We don't hear enough about the challenges. We just see we just see the end story, the success side of it, which is great. Yeah. But the growth, all the learning comes from
the challenges.
All the challenges, the stuff that we screwed up.
Yeah. So while you were thinking about that, while you were saying that, I even brainstormed about how can I put an event together for business owners to come and share just about their failures, their challenges. What is it that they are struggling with the most? And also, I want to hear the worst possible failures that they can share with young professionals, because this is something that everybody is so scared of, right? Failing, being said no, being turned down. So I have thought about this many times, to have an event where people come. I don't want to hear about how successful you are now. I want to hear all the failures that you have that leads you to where you are today. And that's something that I think people will learn a lot from, right? And so now let's switch, because we have to have 2 episodes of this. We have to have 2 episodes. I have to have you back, because today we're not gonna cover developing leadership skill. We're just gonna touch on advice, and then after that it's gonna be time. But let's switch to advice for young professionals. As you know, this podcast is about helping those who are launching their careers find tips and tricks from experienced professionals to do that. And so Now, I shared with you before, we are creating a mentoring platform for young professionals, right, to help them connect with people that are experienced in the community. So, how important do you think mentorship is for career growth? And the next part of the question is part of the development of our platform. So, how can they find a good mentor? But how important do you think mentorship is for career growth?
Incredibly.
Incredible.
Absolutely required for success. No. No different than if you don't read, if you don't learn, you can probably still be successful. But if you're serious about it, if you really want to get after it, then yeah, learn from your peers.
Yep.
Go find, again, get exposed, get out there, get out of your comfort zone, make mistakes, meet people, find those people that you can learn from. And again, I'm a peer advisory board chairman, so that's kind of my shtick. Doesn't have to be that formal though. I love what you're doing, Rico. Getting out and getting up and comers exposed to other executives who you can learn from. I think unfortunately I think sometimes there's a stigma maybe around just the term of mentor. You know, what does that mean? It means probably something different to me than it does to you than it does to somebody else. But at the end of the day, what is it really? What do we get from that relationship? Whatever we want to call it. What do we get from that relationship? And I love helping other executives. I love helping them, and not just me sharing my experiences, but asking questions. When I show up, I always try and show up. I'm curious, and I show up that way. So, best advice for myself is show up curious and shut up. ask curious questions and listen with the 2 ears and not with the one mouth. But
you get an advantage that way, right?
Yeah, 100%. And again, how can you be helpful? So and that's my formula. I'm going to say my formula for success. I guess really hadn't thought about that until just now. But be curious, listen, ask great questions, give before you take, and just know at the end of the day, I think there is a thing called karma. I think there's this thing in the ether that the more goodwill that you get out, it will come back to you. And I think for me, that has been, I'm going to say, a recipe for what I feel like I'm successful. I'm happy. I love what I do. I love giving back. What makes me feel really good is when I can look back at my employees that I've worked with, or people that I've, for whatever along this journey of life, I've met some just incredible people, and when we can get together and break bread, share ideas, challenge each other in good positive way, I learn from that also. So even people that might be whatever a few years younger than me or half my age, there's still things that I learn, and I approach every relationship that way. It's like, what can I learn from our time together? Because it's super valuable. But putting that out there, how do you, formula for success. How do you get it there? Find those folks that you can surround yourself with. And I don't think you need, 30 is probably too many. One's probably not enough. But you think about the things that you can learn from other people. I have about half a dozen people, again, former employees, friends that I picked up along the way, that really, to their testament, have been, as I reflect back, have been great at staying in contact with me. Maybe me not as good as with them. I can get better with that. But great, where I've got one gentleman that worked for me. Ironically, we went to school together at Kearney. He was several years behind me. And when I was in Iowa, running our branch over there, our group, I wooed him away from Nebraska and convinced him to come because there's other Nebraska kids in Iowa and help me fix what's going on over here. And he comes over, and over the last 20 years, his career has been this huge straight trajectory up. Super successful. Same thing, has run many facilities. He beautiful family, he's got great kids, went from being a salesman to a branch manager to he owned his own, part owner of another distribution company, and he sold that, and he got into another one, even bigger, and then now he's like a regional manager for a bigger company, like a regional VP, kind of mucky muck kind of person, and it makes me proud that he'll ping me out of nowhere. He's like, oh, Trent, he kind of calls me the old man, and teases me about that. But we have great conversations. We learn from each other, and surrounding yourself with people like that. And like I said, I have half a dozen folks like that just don't work for me anymore. They're different parts of the country. They all have their own families. Everybody's kind of grown up, but I'm still learning from them. They're still learning from me, and it's this just positive symbiotic relationship. Or if you can go and find some folks, and again, all of those are informal. I guess there's really my point. None of those people came to me and said, hey, Trent, would you be my mentor? It was never anything like that. It was just an enjoyment of learning from each other, being together, just asking good questions and advice. And a lot of times it was just that. Just say, hey, what's going on? Hey, you got a couple minutes? I want to bounce something off you. I've got this thing in my head, and I want to make sure I don't have my blinders on, or I don't have tunnel vision. And then you learn from there. And so, best advice, go find who's on your team, who's on your board of advisors, who are those 2 to 4 or 5 or whatever the number is that you surround yourself that are better than you, that you can tap into their knowledge, and culturally they're a good fit for you, but that you can surround yourself with to help pull you up, help make you better, help you can learn from. And again, you don't have to implement everything that, I don't want anybody to do everything I did, it's just looking at, maybe look at me as just, and your other mentors as just we're a menu in a restaurant. There's all these different things on the menu. What are the 2 or 3 things that I want to pick off that menu, and a couple things over here, and maybe one thing on another menu that I can bring together to create my own menu.
Your best meal.
Exactly. Create my own menu. This is who I am, and I'm going to learn from everybody else.
Oh my goodness. You answer my last question. You answer the one before the question before my last question. So which is really cool, because I was going to ask you about advice for young professionals. Oh man, Trent. I mean, you allow me to call you Trent, but it's Mr. Lee because you have done such a wonderful job today. Pointing out some of the things that young professionals need to really launch their careers, and this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those content, the content that can help that young kid who's getting a major, not knowing what they want to do, but now they know that they can focus on getting on communicating well. They can focus on get out there and network, find someone that they can learn something from, and then see how they can have a coffee or something, right? So this is what this platform is about. So last few words for the professional launch audience from Mr. Lee.
Last few words. Be great humans. Get out, go see your friends, put yourself out there, and it's okay to fail. We all will.
Oh my goodness. That's something I'm gonna keep for myself, because I know sometimes we all are afraid of failure, and you forget for a minute that all people, everybody fails at some point in their lives. So Trent, thank you so much for being on Professional Lunch today. I learned quite a good deal of content that can help me in my life. So I am grateful that you came on and share your experience, your journey, and more importantly, advice to young professionals. So thank you so much for being on Professional Lunch today.
No, thank you for having me.
You're
Always a lot of fun.
You are most welcome. All right. Now that I have mentioned in the last few episodes that we are part of Giving Hearts Day this year, so I count on you, to friends. I count on you, friends, guests, and partners to really do very well on this Giving Hearts Day. So, because your gifts will help us with the development of our mentoring platform, and so I thank you in advance for your gifts, as I know that you will support us as we are bringing every week great guests like Trent here today to share their journey with you. So we thank you so much for supporting Professional Lunch. And reach out to us and see how you can be involved. Maybe suggesting a guest, maybe suggesting someone that you know that will be able to share some great content. We'll be happy to sit down with you and learn more. So thank you so much.